welcome to this week's episode of TacTalk, where we talk all things two-way, tactical, and firearms in general. Today, Andrew, we're going to talk about something I think is real important, and that's red flag laws and what those mean.
Yeah. So earlier this month, April 12th, actually, the White House released a couple of different statements over what they are calling the Bipartisan Safety Act or Safer Communities Act. Communities Act, Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And it's been enacted by an office I didn't even know we had. It's the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. I didn't get to vote in that one. I don't know where that came from. But in an effort to kind of skirt around existing debate and legislation that has been floating the floor concerning gun control, universal background checks, and these things, we've seen the administration kind of take on this new wave of political action, and they're doing it through executive order, which is kind of what we have historically seen done throughout the years, right? I think they're absolutely terrible from the time of FDR until now, but this is how presidents get things done when Congress kind of stonewalls them, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's in this particular the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It says a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that it does is it puts $750 million aside, funding that states can utilize to enact the laws themselves or push the use of those laws. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. It's so it was funded initially backed by $750 million. The main purpose that they are trying to do is they're trying to incentivize some states, or states in particular, that have what they would consider the loophole laws,
real quick. Loophole. That's not a thing, right? And people say something like maybe the gun show loophole and law and stuff. That just means there's not a law in the books.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there's a loophole.
So they used almost every buzzword and trigger word in the gun debate space.
Yep.
In this, I'm not going to call it legislation, in this new rule. Actually, they refer to it as a rule in their White House press documents. But then they refer to it as law afterwards, kind of deceiving to the general populace, doesn't understand how laws are enacted. But the main things that they're trying to do, right, is they're trying to close that supposed loophole law. They're trying to make it firearms less accessible to those that could not, may not, or would not pass a background check. But in that, embedded within all of the jargon that's listed in there and all of the hot buzzwords are these what we would consider red flag laws.
Right.
And I think that those are, and we've hit on different episodes, we have talked about, just kind of skirted the issue, but we've talked about the fact that we need to actually have the conversation about mental health. And they're actually kind of taking it way further and way beyond the scope of even having a conversation. And that's kind of what we'll get into when we talk about some of these red flag laws.
Makes sense, yeah. So why don't we start by breaking down what is a red flag law, right? What is this? Because there's roughly, 20 states, roughly, I think, at this moment, 2022, one of those, that have actually enacted and have some on the books. Now, we're in the freest state, right? We're in Texas.
Gun-wise,
Here we go, right?
Yeah.
We're in Texas, in which case there are none of these.
Yeah.
But if you go to somewhere like, say, California or even Florida has red flag laws. And what are they?
So the simplicity of the simple way to break down what a red flag law is basically, we've kind of all heard the hear something, say something, right?
Okay.
That's what a red flag law is. If I, for some reason, feel that you are displaying some sketchy behavior and I know you own guns, I could therefore petition the court on your behalf to have your guns taken away.
Okay, so you say petition the court. So does that mean, let's say you think I'm sketchy, you think I shouldn't have a gun for whatever reason, right? How does that process go and how quick does it happen? Am I part of the process?
Right. So you are not a part of the process initially, right? And I believe what has to actually happen is you have to file a police report. And when you file the report, if there's any legitimacy to the report, then they will take it through their legal process, through the DA, I'm sure, to a judge and those things, right? But here's the thing is with this new Biden administration one, it is actually allowing teachers in some cases, healthcare professionals, a judge, clearly, and close family and friends to be able
to essentially raise that report and say, we don't think this person should have one, so therefore go take it away.
Right, exactly.
And so My understanding, and I was asking the question a little bit rhetorically, as far as am I a part of that process, right? If that happens and you call a red flag on me, the answer is no. I'm not part of the process. This is something that happens behind closed doors. The judge says, "Yep, we're down for that. Go ahead and do it. Take the guns." In which case, there's an order put in place, and they come confiscate my guns. But I was never part of that process, right? Mm-hmm. Which takes us to a question, and that is part of our Constitution is we have the right to due process.
Yeah.
Right. That's gone at that point.
It's 100% gone.
Right.
Now, so here's the thing, right? Is when we look at the way that government enacts, imposes, and enforces laws.
Sure.
It is to do it through the most peaceable way possible, right? So, law enforcement officer is actually a more modern term. Originally, they were called peace officers.
They were,
right?
Yep.
So that's what a police officer was. They were a peace officer, those that were entrusted and in charge to keep the peace in a community. Now, in saying that, their job is to enforce the existing laws. I never want to encourage anyone, I'm going to be very clear, I never want to encourage anyone to go and try to do that. This is not legal advice. I'm not telling you what to do or how to do it. And I certainly, man, I'm going to tell you straight up, I laugh at the clowns on TikTok. They're like, I'm a sovereign citizen. I'm not rolling down my window. Yeah. Don't be that guy. Don't be an idiot. However, understanding language in the midst of probably one of the hottest debates of our time is really, really important. This is a rule. It is not a law. Congress has to pass a law.
Right. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. And you're talking to somebody that most probably don't realize has a lot of experience dealing with government and enacting of law.
Yeah.
Okay. And so never having been on the government side, but as a private citizen, providing, technologies and whatnot to the government, have been involved and with some pretty big name law. And here's what happens in our world, and let's understand this today, is that we are set up as we vote for who we want to then enact the laws, right? There's a legislature for a reason. Well, currently in today, let's keep in mind that these people, they're really not encouraged to make a name. They're not encouraged to take a stand for anything because they want to get elected for the next term, right?
Yep.
And if you take guys like Joe Biden that were in for 40 years in Congress, right? Yeah. Throughout the process, the reality is that's their biggest concern. So what they are doing today is they're passing laws that are very broad and they're very lukewarm laws, okay? So what you end up with, let's say you have a piece of flagship legislation. You have a law, but all of the rules and the detail inside that how that actually goes into place is absolutely not a part of that law in most cases today.
Right.
And that's a process. That's because these people won't take a stand and say, I want my name on this hardcore portion of this, right?
Yep.
They're saying, this is what we want to do. And then they go hand it to a bureaucrat within the government, okay, who then has to craft the actual rules and regulations that are part of that law, right? Yeah. And so I've seen that happen a lot. Now, the challenge that I see with this is that I can't vote that bureaucrat out that's a lifelong bureaucrat of the government that's actually writing the rules and whatnot in place. I can't vote that guy out if I don't like him, or if I don't, not like him, but don't like what he did, right?
Well, I mean, I would take it a step further, right? Let's peel back the curtain a little bit. So, for example, perhaps one of the most landmark legislations I've been privileged to work on was the Veteran Choice Act, right? Allowing veterans to choose their health care. For those of y'all that don't know, I spent quite a bit of time in D.C. We had people write the legislation, and then we presented it to the congressman to go, therefore, sponsor the bill and bring it out, right? So a lot of times, these guys don't even have the say. It's the person that stroked the check in order to push it.
It absolutely is. I mean, and to not bring up an old topic nobody loves or a lot of people don't like to talk about, but Obamacare legislation, right? I mean, Nancy Pelosi is famous for saying we got to pass it so we know what's in it.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing these days.
Yeah.
So
no, that's
anyway,
exactly it.
To your point, it gets down to where then what you have is a governing body within, that's take the ATF in the case of this, is that they then have to fill out and make these rules, right? Only they're taking a lot of latitude these days, to do that around red flag laws. They've done it with the pistol brace we recently saw, right? Things of that nature. So we have to get and understand, one, what they are trying to do. And right now they are trying to backdoor as many of these red flag laws into place as possible. And then let's understand that these red flag laws are simply a way to confiscate a gun at any given point.
100%.
Now, I don't want to be such the asshole here that I'm not willing to say and admit that, like you said earlier, we do have a mental health crisis in this country.
100%.
That is our problem. The gun is not our problem. Now, truthfully, in its case of mental health and gone awry and situation where somebody may be suicidal, is it the best option for them to have a gun in front of them? No, it's not the best idea for them to have a knife or a car either.
Yeah.
Right in front of them. So I understand, having a situation where we take care of those around us, but let's focus on what the problem is.
Yeah, but I'll even come on the back end, right,
Okay.
and kind of challenge some of it. Do we have a mental health crisis? Yes. Has it been hyperinflated? Absolutely,
100%.
because of big pharma, right? I do not believe, it's my personal belief. Y'all can debate me. Y'all could, whatever. I don't care. We don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree. I don't believe that 40% of Americans have a mental health issue or are depressed or anxious, right?
So, and I'll say that, my wife is a therapist, so I get a little bit of this, right? And the reality is, do we have a mental health crisis to where a large percentage do? Yeah. Do I know what that is? Like you said, 40 or not? I don't know. But is that exasperated by a million things in our culture,
Absolutely.
including, these things right here, our phones, and a constant stream of information that's just kind of screwing our heads up? Yeah, it is, right?
Absolutely.
And so, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
By any means.
Yeah. So bringing this back, right? Again, when we look at these things, we're still not dealing with the issue, right? We're dealing with what makes political sense and not what makes honest sense, right?
You're asking politicians.
Right, exactly. I know what I said. I know what I said. I know what I said.
All right.
Right. We're doing things that make political sense, not honest sense. That we're not really thinking these things through.
Sure.
But again, kind of bringing this back and peeling it back, right? What the ATF gets to enforce, what law enforcement gets to enforce, the way that they can go about these things. When we look at it, right, they're doing this all under the guise of saying, well, we have this now in place as law. No, you have it in place as a written executive order that was written to circumvent the congressional process or the constitutional process of law passed by Congress, right? And again, like I said, we did not just do this with guns. It started with taxes. It started all the way back with FDR.
Well, I think we can admit both sides are doing it these days. Right?
There is, once we set the precedent of we can enforce something, right, it's done. It's gone, right? The probably one of my favorite presidents and one of the least talked about was Woodrow Wilson, right? Woodrow Wilson did not use the power of executive order. He used the power of veto. When a law would come across his desk, he would let Congress pass it, and he would say, no, not signing that. Right? No, not doing that. He was the master of no, right? He was the master of small government and keeping it small by cutting that back, right? I think probably one of my favorite stories, and this is kind of just free for you guys, right, of Woodrow Wilson. I'm sorry, not Woodrow Wilson. Wow. Some people are going to hate me for calling him that. Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge.
Wow, you're way off.
I was way off.
Go ahead.
I can't stand Woodrow Wilson. But Coolidge, one of my favorite things that he did was he made Congress buy their own pencils. He stopped. He's like, dude, we're spending X amount of dollars of tax dollars on pencils? No, you buy your own pencils, right? He used the power of no. So when we understand that there are other ways to get things done, let Congress do their job, right? We, but
now,
it is what it is.
It is what it is, unfortunately, and I think we can debate the fact that executive orders being overused, that the legislators on the Hill are not doing their jobs the way they should, not standing for anything, having any balls. But let's get back to red flag laws in general, right? Mm-hmm. And that is, are they good or are they bad? So let's talk about the pros and cons of red flag laws. What are the pros? What are the pros? Can we throw any of those out?
Me personally, no. I don't think there are any pros to it, right? Because you're now allowing, in all circumstances, right? Because when we're talking about this as a law, we're talking about this as a blanket standard for all American citizens, right? So to me, there are no pros in that. If we were to implement this, or not implement it, but if we were to, and we've been doing it like for years, right? If somebody has mental health issues, or has gone through something, or has been detained for psychiatric care or treatment, right? They are going to go back to what we've talked about in a previous episode. They're, on the Ghost Guns episode, we talked about federal background checks, NICS laws, all of those things. They're going to be flagged. They're not going to be able to own a firearm, right? So that's already done. We've been doing it for years.
Right, but Andrew, the question though is take it further. Somebody to counter that is going to say, yeah, they might get flagged on a NICS check later when they go to buy a gun.
Okay.
But let's say that they are suicidal right now, and there's a gun in the house.
Sure.
They already have it. The NICS check's not going to help at that point. Is this?
Sure.
I mean, that's the argument people are going to say, right?
Sure. If you have shoelaces in your house and you're suicidal, right? I mean, if you have a knife in your house and you're suicidal,
right?
If you have a bottle of aspirin in your house and you're suicidal, right?
And so I think what this comes to is an understanding that where somebody else's rights exist, mine do as well.
Yeah,
100%. Right? And so we have to have a law, and keep in mind that we have common sense laws in general, right? That just because they go to protect one person, that it doesn't infringe on my right. And the reality is a red flag law is an infringement. And the Second Amendment says will not infringe.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
Period. It's very, very clear, right? And we did an episode on that where we talk about the Second Amendment. The reality is red flag laws are damaging to the fact that, one, they're not constitutional against, as far as the Second Amendment goes, and they completely blank out due process.
Yeah.
Period. Those are challenges. Now let's talk about red flag laws, and let's say, just for a minute, let's say there's this magical land where all is good and everybody's intentions are good, so we have red flag laws on the books. How can they be misused?
Oh, easily, bro. Like, I mean, and that's the problem, right? Is, all of a sudden, if a teacher sees some abnormal behavior, college professor, right? Let's talk about those that are legal age to hold guns when we say teacher, right? They might say, oh, I don't think that student's behaving normally, and they know that student might be a hunter, for example, or something like that, right? Because that's the one that everybody wants to throw out. Well, it's for hunting. All of a sudden, they're now reported. Court goes, like you said, behind their back through this process, and they say, hey, you can't own guns anymore.
So right? I'll give an example that I think is even more nefarious than that. The reality is, let's say there's a lot of situations where couples don't work out, breakups happen, right? And let's say a guy or a girl has a gun, and they decide they want to use this as a way to screw with the other person. Could they not go to the courthouse at this point and say, hey, I don't think that Andrew should have a gun because he's unstable?
Yeah.
When in reality, you're stable. Nothing's wrong with you having a gun. You're not going to use it in any way that's nefarious.
Yeah.
But the action of that is being weaponized against you in that case, right?
Absolutely.
That is an extremity at which this could go to, right? And I think that's what a lot of people worry about, right? Is that it's taking away, our own rights and taking away our own ability to govern our own lives.
No, absolutely. But at the end of the day, who doesn't need to own a gun?
Who's that?
This guy. This guy does not need to own a gun. This guy has already told you he's going to shoot his 12 gauge in the air to ward you off. Like, this guy. And
well, he actually thinks everybody else shouldn't have guns.
Yeah.
But there's at least 12 guys with him in suits and guns around him at all times, right?
But as he signed this, I'm just keeping it real, fam.
Keeping it real, fam. That's hilarious. Where did that even come from?
I have no idea. It was here in the studio.
Wow. He's graced.
He's graced us.
Graced this place. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna put in the description. Joe Biden joins the podcast.
It's wild, right? It's wild that a lot of people
talk about mentally unstable.
Absolutely, man.
Okay.
Let's not.
Sorry.
Let's not. So the reality is here, when we think about red flag laws, is we understand that they are infringing upon rights. Yeah. They may be with some good intentions of wanting to protect people, but I think we need to, instead of focus on red flag laws, actually pay attention to what matters, and that is take it back to the mental health crisis, take it back to the opiate crisis. All these things are causing issues that if we actually put that $750 million that is there for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to be used toward perhaps of, mental health resources, maybe we wouldn't have this problem. Or we wouldn't be infringing on rights. We would actually be helping people.
Let's take $750 million and throw it at our southern border and enforce some laws there to keep fentanyl from coming into our
100%.
country.
Right.
But I digress.
Right.
Let me just, so our viewers and listeners can kind of get an understanding as to kind of what we're talking about overall, right? Red flag laws are embedded within what we have called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This is exactly what it is. So I'm going to give you the bullet points. This is coming directly from whitehouse.gov. It lists the types of commercial activity indicating that a person must become a licensed dealer to run background checks in order to sell a firearm.
Okay.
Already a law.
Already a thing. There's no need for it there.
Already a standard.
Yep.
States that gun show or online loopholes do not exist.
Okay.
Also, already a thing.
There's not a
There's no such thing.
Okay.
It prevents people from evading the licensing and background check requirements by claiming that they are just selling a few guns.
Already on the books. Already. If you're selling actively for commercial purposes, you're selling firearms, you must have an FFL license.
Yeah. And when we say on the books, we're talking about federal law.
Yes.
Not a state law. This is on the books federally across the board.
What else is it?
Prevents people from falsely claiming that guns are a part of a personal collection in an attempt to evade the law.
Yet again, already barred.
Right.
Yep.
And if you're kind of confused on that one, go look up what a gun trust is, right? You still have to have a trust in order to have a private collection like that. Anyway, and then it says closes so-called fire sale loopholes. Again, on the books.
Right. And so what I'm actually to understand then is this act, and then along with it, all of the rules and various releases that are coming out from whitehouse.gov and so, right, and from the president and his staff are really nothing more than utter bullshit, right? That is simply doing what? It's making people and giving people the perception that these weren't things prior. So we needed a new rule to be able to put there. So it's freaking people out for no reason.
So in hopes, this is what they're going to accomplish. By the way, these things are already being accomplished. In hopes, this legislation, again, coming straight from whitehouse.gov, is this. They want to stop gun trafficking, and enforce that law. Okay?
It's
on the books. They're cracking down on rogue gun dealers.
So really, let me get into that one actually and talk about what they're really saying there. Yep. If you read the subtext to that particular portion there on whitehouse.gov, what they're actually talking about is private sellers, private citizens. They're talking about me. They're talking about you. Yep. They're talking about the fact that I may decide that this pistol isn't the one I want to carry anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't want it. So I sell it to you as a private citizen, right? And we're just two guys doing it. We're not doing it to make a living. It's not a commercial act whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I am just selling a piece of my private property.
Right.
And that's what they mean there. When the White House and Biden and Kamala Harris and so on are putting these things out there, they're acting like and trying to put us all in this category that we're acting as dealers.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that's not what's happening. It's a private thing being sold to you.
And we've talked about this in a previous episode. I think we talked about it on the Second Amendment episode where I said if I were to take this one, if I said, hey, I'm not really a Glock 19 guy anymore. I think, Chris, I know you kind of like Glocks, which is total opposite, right? You're a SIG guy, I'm a Glock guy. But I would say, hey, you interested in buying this? And you, hey, kind of am interested in buying that. I have already passed a background check to own this firearm.
Sure.
You have not. It would be completely irresponsible of me to not even at minimum have a bill of sale.
Well, not only that, but and one of the things, if we kept going bullet points, talks about there that you cannot sell a firearm to somebody that could not pass a firearm test or pass a background test. That is already a rule.
That's already a rule.
That's already exists as something that we shouldn't do. For that matter, have you ever? I have certainly bought guns from people that are selling me just your personal gun, whatever. Mm-hmm. And every time that I've ever bought a gun from somebody hand to hand, I've been asked for my license to carry.
Yep.
My concealed handgun license, right? Why am I asked for that? Because that guy knows that if I have one of those, I have clear background checks, right?
100%.
It's a good practice that the vast majority of people are doing anyway.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This next one, kind of funny. Go reference the episode that just that dropped a week ago on ghost guns, but this is stopping the gun manufacturers illegally selling ghost guns.
I got to give it. I mean, they were as ballsy as even listing polymer 80 specifically in that.
Yeah, they were.
Companies.
They were.
Wow. Yeah.
Including certain polymer 80 handgun
Yeah.
frames.
Yeah.
It literally says that in the subtext, or the buy to build shoot kits.
Which, guys, polymer 80 is a terrific company, right? They're a company of patriots that have done some things and followed the law specifically, and the ATF has it out for them.
Yeah.
Incredible business. As a matter of fact, this firearm over here, both the slide and the
chassis
grip module, are polymer 80.
Yeah.
And they're wonderfully shooting guns.
Yep. That one here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So they want to have a Senate-confirmed ATF director. President Biden secured the confirmation of the ATF director, Steve Dettelbach.
They did confirm.
They did confirm him, right? So that was done.
Yep.
Crime Gun Intelligence Center has been set up. And now they're doing a new analysis on gun trafficking, because the last one that was done in 2021.
So really, and that's the end of it there. The reality is, all of this announcement by whitehouse.gov, by the president, is nothing more than busy work, guys.
100%.
It's all busy work. It's a scare tactic. It's a scare tactic. That's what I mean. It's already on the books. These things are there, and they're riling the American public up on it.
Yeah.
That's what's happening, right? That's all that is. Now, red flag laws, we need to protect what we have, and we need to protect our civil liberties and also our rights.
Yeah.
And if we allow this, we are ultimately impeding in part of the problem.
100%.
Right?
Again, like I said, the issue is not the safety and security and those things that are being touted. The issue is the fact that this is a blanket statement that can be imposed on any legal citizen.
Any legal citizen, and it can be used in a very nefarious way.
Absolutely.
Right? There is no way to actually properly quantify this process that they've talked about, and that they have the Extreme Measures Act and so on, that it's in California. There's no way to properly quantify these things.
No.
And you have to be able to have that in place so that there aren't people using it nefariously. If you're going to have things on this book, even if we want, let's have a conversation about how do we continue to keep people safer.
Yeah.
Right? But that's where it needs to be. How do we keep people safer? And it's not restricting an item like a knife, a pencil, a car, a gun, whatever it is from folks. If they want to get something done, guys, it's a terrible thing to have mental health issues, and it's a terrible thing to feel in a dark place. And I think we've all known somebody in our lives that's been there, right, to some level. And we need to focus on getting these folks help in upfront to where it doesn't become an issue, right? Like let's not just take away a gun because it could be used as a tool in things like me hunting, things like me protecting myself, or even if I want to do harm to myself or somebody else, right? It's just a tool.
Yeah.
It really comes down into the will of that person.
Absolutely. Right? And the other side of this, and kind of like what we've talked about, right, with mental health, with all of these things, with this being a law, blanket statements, all of the issues that kind of get balled up in this one conversation and in this argument, when you strip back the pieces, right, and you just kind of really look at it, all we're trying to do, and all we're saying today on this episode, is that we believe in the Constitution and that things should be done constitutionally. Because at the end of the day, the only people that follow laws are people who are already following laws.
Right.
Right. So the only people that laws affect are law-obeying citizens.
And let's, absolutely. Let's go as far as say, guys, the framers were very good in putting together systems in place here that if you didn't like what the Constitution said and you needed to have an amendment to it, you could, right? Yeah. So these processes are in place. Now, we haven't had an amendment in a very long time, right? But all of these processes to change and shift and make the Constitution fit for maybe where we are today. All processes exist, but we got to follow those processes.
We can take it
legit.
You can take it even further than that, right? They have put into place processes where you can ratify the whole document.
Right.
That we can get into that some other time, right? Where we talk Convention of States, we talk about all of these things, and we talk about the 3/4 rule, and those things are in place, and they were in place since the framers penned the documents, right? Again, all we're saying, the only thing I'm saying is that we have existing laws in place, and I think they're good laws. I obey those laws. Do I think some of them are kind of overreaching at times? Maybe, but at the same time, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm going to obey those laws.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is we're talking about the government using, kind of busy work and using buzzwords to try to rile us all up. Let's also consider, what are they doing, okay? Yeah. And understand that nothing on that list, nothing that they're talking about doing as far as further gun control today is anything that would have changed any of the tragedies that have happened.
No.
These are all what do all of these people have in common? They're mentally unstable folks that need help in that sense.
Yeah.
So let's get them that damn help, right? Yeah. But don't infringe upon my rights because somebody else needs that, right? Yeah. And so, guys, this has, I think, been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we appreciate you spending time with us every day. We are at the top of this time. And we've been having a lot of great conversations lately, right? Things on ghost guns we recently talked about. Also have a special episode being released as far as EDC and what we carry, loadouts. In that episode, you're going to be able to see Vincent Rocco Vargas with us. Many of you will recognize him, and a wonderful person. So happy to have that conversation. But if you need...
There's a rumor, too, coming up that in a couple of episodes, we're going to actually drop an episode with... a Second Amendment attorney that's pretty prominent and passed some things. And
that's right.
Got some guys lined up.
We do have some cool stuff coming. But again, thank you for spending time with us. This episode is brought to you by Vulcan Arms and also GunsAmerica.com. And till next time, thank you.
Wait, what can I buy at GunsAmerica.com?
Anything you want firearm related, sir.
Awesome. And can I get premium firearms accessories?
At VulcanArms.com.
Go check us out.
Thank you.